Hey, what's up? It's Technologics, and today we're taking a look at one of the most famous and influential video game systems ever, if not the most famous and influential. How does the Nintendo Entertainment System hold up today? First off, I decided to do a video on the NES due to the recent success of Nintendo's new mini version of it, and I thought this would be a cool video. And when I say recent success, that's actually more like, what, 5 months ago, 4 months ago? I wrote the script for this like 4 months ago, so without further ado, let's get right into this. So the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, was released all the way back in 1985 for North America and was mind-blowing, to say the least. This was way before my time, but I've always found this kind of stuff very interesting, and I can only imagine what a kid would have thought of it back then. This single-handedly brought video games back after the crash in the 70s, as it allowed a streamlined fun experience for the whole family at home on their own TV, and a much better experience than that of the Atari. It was an 8-bit console, which meant that graphics were less than great, but they do certainly have a nice charm. It's interesting how much games actually start to push limits for the consoles. Just look at the original Super Mario Bros. Compared to Super Mario Bros. 3. Graphics are much better on the latter. The system itself is fairly simple to use. It connects to the TV using the classic cable cord, which is fine. It does have an AV connection, which is a bit more modern. No HDMI, sorry. It plugs into the wall and voila, you can turn it on. The NES controller itself is extremely simplistic with 4 buttons on the D-pad. There's a start button, select button, a B button, and an A button. And that's pretty much it. It's a basic rectangle that needs to be plugged into the console, and it feels okay in the hand, and the simplicity of the controller results in games that are easy to get into. None of the complicated games as seen today. This is definitely not a bad thing, as it opens up a much wider market for this thing. Games come as cartridges, as they did on the Nintendo consoles up to the Nintendo 64, not including portable consoles. Actually, the Nintendo Switch has cartridges too, just way smaller, so that's cool, I guess. But anyways, you can just pop the game in, which is very convenient. You don't need to worry about disk drive issues with this thing. If the game seems to not be working, you can blow inside the cartridge and that should help. Just put it in, turn it on, and boom, you're playing the original Nintendo. Games from this time have been long surpassed in terms of technicality and quality, but they still have an irresistible charm, as I think I said earlier, that makes one think back to the simpler days of gaming. From the modesty of Tetris to the masterpiece that is Super Mario Bros. 1 and 3, the NES is just plain out fun to play. You notice I said Super Mario Bros. 1 and 3, not 2. There's a reason for that. If you're really interested, go look it up, but it's a weird game. But anyway, I will admit that the NES does not keep my attention for too long. There isn't any saving in this game, which means when you turn off the console, you have to completely restart everything. I found myself leaving the NES on for long periods of time while I did other stuff, which probably isn't a good thing. I don't know how much power this thing sucks, but even so. While it really blows that you can't save your progress, if there's one benefit to it is that it results in mastery. Playing the game again and again means that you only get better, you start to remember all the levels, and you get really good. So that's cool, but it's an inconvenience. Such was the time. So while I can't sit down and play for hours like I can on Skyrim, it's fun for a bit, and it's something you can always go back to. It's a cool piece of history, and even though I didn't play it when I was younger, I still found it fun to play now. Of course, I was born in the generation where everything is instantly at your fingertips. My first video game experience really goes back to the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, mostly PlayStation 2. PS1 had been out for quite a while at that point, but at that point, you know, everything was saved onto memory cards, and so this is something that's a little different for me, and I'm not sure I like it as much, but on the other hand, it's not like they're super long games, most of them, so some of them are, but most of them aren't. To summarize, the games that I played on it were well made and enjoyable. While technical limitations are definitely noticeable, I'm willing to give it a pass considering the age, and same thing for saving. When it comes to the actual console itself, I'll talk a little bit more about it. When it comes to the design of the console, just for fun, it looks not bad. For the time, it was definitely a good looking thing, and I would say that even now, I don't know if it's good looking necessarily, or if I'm just blinded by the fact that this thing revolutionized everything, for video game wise anyway, but it looks pretty nice anyway. You know, it's definitely that old retro look, and that's okay. The thing is a lot of fun to play around on, and I can see why people loved it back in the 80s and the 90s. This console was replaced by the Super Nintendo in the 90s, and at this point, things really started to get more interesting in the console market, because for a few years it was just kind of the Nintendo was really the only mainstream system, and then Sega brought the Sega Genesis, which was a really good system. I have that actually. This NES here was at my grandparents' place, but I have the Sega at home, and it's a lot of fun. I play Sonic on it sometimes, but I'd love to do a review on that at some point. Hopefully I will. But anyway, about the Sega Genesis, that competed with the Super Nintendo, and then PlayStation brought the PlayStation 1, and all of a sudden we had 3D graphics, and it was like everything again was changed. So it's quite interesting to see how things went. While this might seem irrelevant to the NES, it really shows how much this thing paved the way for the entire future of the video game industry. Without this thing, who knows what the video game industry would have looked like. Maybe another company would have made a good console and tried it, or maybe it would have teetered out completely. I think it is safe to say something would have happened, because 1984 was the year Macintosh was released, and that changed everything in the computer industry, leading eventually to what we have today. So I think video games would have been probably introduced somewhere along the line, but I highly doubt they would be nearly as polished or as good as they are today. So thank you, Nintendo, for bringing this into our lives and letting me waste way too much time on these stupid games that are really, really, really fun. So that's a little tiny bit of the history. I could go on and on, really. I know way too much about this stuff, but in conclusion, this is a really dang cool console. I don't know what else to say. While the NES isn't anything spectacular by today's standards, it single-handedly brought video games back from the grave and helped turn them into the mainstream thing that it is today. Should you buy one today? Well, I mean, unless you collect old consoles, not really, no point. But you can find them on Craigslist if you are interested for like not that expensive, $50 I found a couple for. Of course, games tend to be a little more expensive, especially for the really good games, but you can find them. But there's really not any point unless you are a collector. You can get all the games through emulators on your PC, Mac, or believe it or not, even Chromebook, or Android, or iPhone. Yeah, that's right, I said iPhone. Usually you need to be jailbroken, but there are some methods where you don't need to be. Now, I don't think it's really too good on the iPhone or Android unless you have like a controller, because I hate using the touchscreen for instead of physical buttons. I find it very difficult, but that's just me, I don't know. And of course, there's the NES Mini, which holds 30 games and offers a very similar and higher quality experience. You can also use the virtual consoles on Nintendo's newer systems, and honestly there's so many ways to play these old Nintendo games that there's just no point to get an old console other than it'll look cool on your shelf by your TV if that's what you want to do. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did at all, like even like a fraction of you, like a tenth of you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. If you didn't like it, then go ahead and dislike. However, just know that every time a person dislikes this video, a kitten cries. It might be your kitten, it might be I don't have a kitten, it might be someone else's kitten, it could be anybody's kitten, but you know, it is going to cry, so just don't dislike it. I mean, you really want a kitten to cry, that's terrible, you horrible person if that's the case. Moving on, comment your thoughts on the old Nintendo down below. Did you play the system? Do you have a system? Do you want to play the system? Have you played the emulators? Just tell me what you think of this thing, because it's pretty cool. I sincerely hope you have a great day, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in the next one.